And now we have the joy of Dr. Jane Simmons' talk, where you see Searching for the Pot of Gold. This Sunday is St. Patrick's Day, a day to celebrate the luck of the Irish and explore some of the Irish legends and mythology. What is the metaphysical meaning behind finding a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow? What is needed to aid in the search? You can see that Jane got her doctorate in theology from Holos and is ordained Unity minister. Before retiring from the pulpit, she was at 4 different Unity churches. How about that? A traveler. And she's currently a member of adjunct faculty for Unity. And then along with her husband, Gary, co-facilitates the Integral Ministry Certificate Program. How about that? Jane, if you would, tell us what you have for us today.
Yes. Well, it's a delight to be with you all. By the way, I retired in 2020, not 2002. I was like, wow, that was a long time ago. So it's lovely to be with you all. It's been a while since I have been with, this community. And I always enjoy my time with you folks. So I'm very grateful to be here today and to share in St. Patrick's Day celebration. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you all. A day to wear green and celebrate the luck of the Irish with their leprechauns and shamrocks and pots of gold at the end of the rainbow and green beverages, I'll just say that. And to honor St. Patrick, the 5th century patron saint of Ireland. St. Patrick's story goes that he was born into a wealthy family, but at the age of 16, he was kidnapped and sold into slavery for 6 years. And at that time, he escaped to France, joined a monastery, and returned to Ireland many years later as a missionary. And during a 40-day fast that he was on, he was attacked by snakes, and he chased them all into the sea with a powerful sermon that he gave. Now, that was the first I'd heard that it was through a sermon. It was kind of a reverse Pied Piper, if you will. And that must have been quite the sermon. I'm not sure today's message is going to rise quite to that level, but we'll see. Just as an aside, of course, scientists are saying that there have been no native snakes in Ireland since the end of the Ice Age, but still the legend continues. There's also conjecture that speaking of the snakes is actually referring to the Druids. Paganism, he chased that out of Ireland at the time and brought in Catholicism, but nevertheless, this legend of chasing away the snakes continues. And of course, scientists also tell us that there is no end to a rainbow. It's a complete circle, but we never see that because the horizon is in the way. But if we set out to find the end of that rainbow, we kept on walking, you know what would happen? It would always appear on the horizon. It would always be moving. So these myths and legends are interesting to connect with. And what I love about legends and mythology is that there's always a kernel of truth with a capital T sort of hidden within it. And we know this from Bible metaphysics and other things that we study. So my talk title is Searching for a Pot of Gold. And I thought we would explore that aspect of St. Patrick's Day a little bit this morning, because it's a wonderful analogy for how many of us in the Western culture have lived our lives searching for a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow, which we want to take a look at. What does that mean? If we are seeking treasure outside of ourselves, what does that mean? Now, you're probably familiar with the Hindu parable that Eric Butterworth relates in his book, Discover the Power Within You. And in the story, the gods are together discussing where they should hide humanity's divinity out of fear that it will one day be misused. And they explore all the possibilities, maybe on the highest peak of the highest mountain, maybe on the ocean floor, or buried deep into the earth, or hidden in the deepest jungle, or in the thick of the forest. And one by one, they discard each choice, realizing, well, one day humanity is going to visit those remote places. And then they come up with the perfect hiding places. I know, we'll put them within every heart. And you know what? They'll never think of looking there. And so the story goes, we have been scaling mountains and mining the earth and diving into oceans and traipsing through forests and jungles, looking for an elusive something that can only be found within us and is, in fact, is closer than our very breath. Closer than our very breath. Why do we do this? Why? Well, guess what? Our culture teaches us to. We fall under the spell of the illusion of separation at a very young age. We take on false beliefs that our value lies in what we have or what we do, rather than just by virtue of who we are. And so we learn to compete, to compare ourselves with others, to strive to be successful. And when we are searching outside of ourselves for that pot of gold, whether it's for validation, satisfaction, self-worth, we are looking for a sense of fulfillment where it can never be found. The end of that rainbow is just going to keep on moving, just keep on moving, and yet we continue that search. There's a story told in the Sufi tradition about a man walking home late one night. He comes across his neighbor searching under a street light for something on the ground. And he asks him, what are you looking for? And the neighbor answers, it's his house key, he's lost. So the man starts searching the area with him. And after a while, he says, well, where exactly were you when you dropped it? And the neighbor points to the house and says, well, it's inside somewhere. So the man says, well, why are you looking for it here? Well, the lighting is better. Now, this is a very silly story, of course, but again, within its absurdity, there's a little kernel of truth for us to learn from. And it points to the incongruity of all of this fruitless searching and competing for the prize, which can never be found outside of ourselves. We just keep looking for it. But this behavior, this searching for something for fulfillment outside, it goes well beyond silliness, well beyond it. In fact, I believe it's the very root cause of the divisiveness that we find that is rampant in our culture today. Because it leads to an us and them mentality. And that just permeates our world. In fact, the Franciscan priest Richard Rohr says, win-lose stories are cemented right into our cultural hard drive, is the way that he puts it. Win-lose stories, just cemented right in. And those stories lead to angry, hurtful, unkind, polarized behavior, nastiness on social media. Do you know what I mean by this? Have you noticed any of this going on in our world? And here's the question for us. Does unity have a role to play in healing that divide? And if so, is it now that we can do it? My answer to both of those, a resounding hell yeah. I think unity is got a role to play, and I think the time is now. And I believe that this time of awakening it's about awakening the divinity within us. Awaken this inner treasure, the pot of gold that we're seeking, and then allowing that powerful treasure that is within us to bring forth the emergence of cultural transformation. Do you see? When we look for it in here, when we awaken it, now we can allow it to move through us, to bring forth something new and better. And we contribute to bringing forth a kinder and more compassionate world doing this by first bridging the gap, withdrawing from participation in us and them behavior and thinking. There is an immense power in doing this, in withdrawing our energy from polarization. We stop the fire from going. And knowing the little that I do about shadow work and about the tendency for me to project what I don't want to see within myself, or what I'm hiding from or repressing, and then projecting it onto the world, the little I know about that, along with how cultures grow and evolve, it's become increasingly apparent to me that a new paradigm of spirituality is needed to heal this. A new paradigm of spirituality. And in fact, this new paradigm is ready to emerge as a powerful force to heal this divide. And I think that Unity and other New Thought communities are well equipped to lead the way and to usher it in. Why? Because of our basic principles that we teach. You know, to begin with, we have this pesky little foundation that there's only one life, right? There's one presence, one power, and that life moves through each one of us. We believe that the divine is encoded in every heart, and that the treasure we seek lies within, and that we can connect with that treasure through prayer, meditation. We also believe that we experience reality through the lens of the thoughts and the beliefs that routinely occupy our psyche, right? And so we have to take action if we want to see transformation. We have to be the change before we see the change. Now, these aren't just inconvenient truths. They're the principles we espouse in Unity. And if we want to live our lives as if they're true, if we really believe that we're here to make a difference in our world, to bring forth a more peaceful world, then the opportunity is right for us right now to step up, to help bring it forth by taking action that embodies the change that we want to see. The social activist Dorothy Day poses this question: the greatest challenge of the day, how to bring about a revolution of the heart, a revolution that has to start within each one of us. And it all begins by turning inward, connecting with that pot of gold, the treasure within. And then as we each do this work, then it multiplies as we join together in heart-centered group meditation, creating a coherent energetic field of love and empathy and kindness and compassion, which we will do later on in our time together when we come together in meditation. And that field, within that field, is where the change and transformation can now take place. Are you feeling the power of this, that we have as spiritual beings having a human experience? We can connect with who we really are and be that change. So here's a question for you that we'll all hope to answer by the end of the talk. How many meditators does it take to change a culture? And no, it's not a joke, but it's just something to consider as we explore this a little deeper. Because there's lots of amazing research about the power of group meditation. Much of it, I'm sure you're familiar with: a 23% reduction in the crime rate of Washington, D.C. due to a 2-month prayer intervention, crime and terrorist activity reduction in the 80s in the Middle East through group meditation. We could use some more of that right now, couldn't we? Lots of research on focused intention, groups coming together with this combined collective intention, or distance healing, or plant growth through the power of the heart. Quantum researcher and scientist William Tiller, he's one of my personal heroes. He just recently passed, but in his work, he measured the effects that happen when you bring groups together for regular gatherings of focused intention. And he discovered 2 things that were unexpected. The first was that continued intentional heart-centered group meditation actually conditioned the room that they were meditating within. They could measure changes in the atmosphere in the lab that they were meeting regularly in. They could see what was happening. Something was happening there. The second thing he found was that it had a cumulative effect. The more often they met and the longer they did it, the stronger the effect. You see, the more this resonance grew, it's like a bank account. The more we do this resonance work, it's like we create something that keeps on growing and expanding and becoming more. But those effects aren't only transformational in the outer world, they are that, but they also have an effect on us as the meditator. Mindfulness, loving kindness meditation, self-compassion practices, all of these have been researched and shown to have really significantly positive effects on the individual meditator, from increased brain activity in areas of compassion, empathy, focus, attention, to a decrease of stress in the body and mind, to a reduction of self-criticism, perfectionism, anxiety, depression. All those things going on were significantly reduced through these practices. In fact, I would say self-compassion, in my opinion, is the sermon that quiets down the snakes. They stop attacking. They settle down, right? If you think of that critical voice in our heads, all of that we can find relief from that through these practices. So it's good for our inner and outer environment to practice heart-centered meditation. Isn't that exciting news? Truly, this has become my ministry, is kind of talking about this and practicing with people. As the author Bell Hooks, an activist, she is also an activist, she writes this: the mind is a transmitter and receiver of energy. When we raise our thoughts to the frequency of love and compassion, this is where transformation happens, both inner and outer. So loving kindness and compassion are needed now more than ever, as we live in this time when there is social and political daily happenings that keep on sowing seeds of alienation and distrust. It's the antidote. So we should never be fooled into thinking that focused, collective, emotionally strong intention is wimpy. It is not. It is powerful. Be still and know that I am God. And I've heard meditation described as sitting still long enough for you to find you. And the you we're talking about is the higher self, our authentic identity, our essential nature, who we've come here to be. However we want to call this, this is our work, to let the treasure within us find us as we align with its vibrational signature of divine love, and then sharing that with all beings. But there's also some equally important inner work that has to be done along with this. Even though we already have this inner treasure, even though the pot of gold lives within us right now, it's very possible to have it so covered in layers of self-created sludge that and limitation, that the flow gets plugged up. It can't escape. It can't be shared with the world because it's all plugged up, and then it'll just maybe trickle out. So we have to address the beliefs causing that limitation, starting with what I think of as the original wound, which is a belief in separation. That's the one that starts the whole thing. Believing someone or something is against me, right? Or they're to blame for this, right? Believing that we are flawed in some way, and that we're lacking and can't make a difference. Those kind of beliefs, whether I'm looking at someone else as the problem or myself, when we're stuck in those, we become powerless to make change, powerless to help usher in any transformation. So we have to do our own internal healing work. And if we don't, we'll just keep on struggling through the weight of the unwanted baggage that comes from any of these unhealed shadow material within us, shadow qualities, and we'll keep on projecting them onto the other. It's kind of what we do. And so these are this unhealed shadow material are really the places within ourselves that we have deemed to be unacceptable or unlovable or, orphaned in some way, repressed. We do this through our younger years. We learn how to do this as we're growing up. And those parts don't go away. They're under the surface, causing all kinds of stuff for us. And as Richard Rohr says, this collective call, and what he's talking about is to bring forth a new world. This collective call can only be answered by those who have done this work, a work of self-mastery. Otherwise, he says, there's insufficient strength. There's not enough connection to our essential center to do the heavy lifting that comes from transforming society. I love, he's so right on the money here. So whenever I become triggered by another's behavior, that's when I need to do the deeper work of seeing, what is that mirroring for me? What's going on here? What's that touching within me that I'm just trying to keep under wraps? And then when I identify what that is, here's where self-compassion, self-forgiveness, self-acceptance, self-kindness are paramount to do the integration work. And when I do that, I will neutralize my reactivity. That's when I'll know I'm getting there. When the same thing can happen, and this time I don't react. I might not like it. I might take steps to change it, but instead of reacting and becoming totally powerless in the moment, I become the source of my own fulfillment by neutralizing those triggering moments. Now, to be clear, this takes some significant practice. We don't just snap our fingers. Our subconscious mind may not even have a reference point for compassion and acceptance and forgiveness toward ourselves. That might be so foreign, and it might take time to become a natural, familiar state. But as I read recently, unless we make room for the reality of our entire human experience, and that includes those unacceptable parts that we've exiled, if we don't make room for it all, grief just insists on taking over the whole house. And this is where depression comes in and all the rest of it. Not to say that grief doesn't have a place in our, healing. Of course it does. But when we refuse to embrace all of who we are with love and compassion, it will just stay. It will get stuck in it. But here's the thing, those previously orphaned parts actually contain our greatest creative power when we integrate them instead of repressing them or projecting them. We regain their creative power. And when we make room for all of who we are with love and forgiveness, we start to experience our true wholeness. See? Because when we get to a place of forgiving in here, what we're seeing mirrored out there, it's a practice called Ho'oponopono. You see something out there that triggers you, you find where you are connecting with it inside, and you do the forgiveness work here. When that happens, now we can respond with clarity. Now we can respond with compassion instead of lashing out from a place of powerlessness and fear. It's a whole different way of living our lives when we can get into this coherent state and now bring the harmony and the peace that engenders into the equation. Now there's room for change. Now there's a spaciousness that welcomes transformation, and our inner state becomes a profound gift for humanity's evolution. Do you feel that? Lao Tzu said this: you want to awaken all of humanity? Awaken all of you. And that includes those parts that are slumbering away under the surface. And he goes on to say that our own transformation is the true gift that we give to the world. And that's what we do when we use the mirror to discover what needs healing within ourselves and then do the integration work within. Imagine with me that the entire New Thought movement is engaged in this kind of healing work, using the mirror to help us unearth and integrate internal blind spots that we keep tripping over or that keep plugging up, our ability to be love in action. And then step by step, taking kind, compassionate action, working together as a human race. This is true spiritually motivated social action in being happening in the world, right? Is this work easy? Not for the ego, it isn't. Are you kidding? It can feel like everything in me is resisting it. I would much rather project my stuff onto someone else. That feels way better. But the truth is, this is soul work. This is our soul work. Every one of us has the ability to do this because we have a dynamic powerhouse of universal benevolence that is within us that's ready to call upon in order to lift and carry us through the integration process. It takes care of the heavy lifting when we call upon it. So every moment that we are willing for whatever's showing up to bring healing, that moment becomes a sacred one. Every moment that we're willing to let whatever's showing up be used for healing, that's a sacred moment that serves as a gateway to a new paradigm of awareness. Do you see it? Because layers of cellular pain, memories can now clear out and make room for the emergence of heart-centered consciousness. The flow opens, the hose is, just everything's flowing through it. And then we can start perceiving each other in a different light, even if we're on opposite sides of the spectrum. You see something here that Jimmy Fallon did, where he got people from different sides of the political spectrum to come together and find their commonality. And this is what happens when they would finally find out what it was. We start to shift into seeing each other as fellow human beings rather than the enemy on opposite sides of the spectrum. Hey, we've tried a whole lot of negative ways to solve our problems. Why not give peace a chance, as John and Yoko asked us so many decades ago? So are you ready to give it a try? The correct response here is yes, but we'll get to that later. Because here's the thing, Eckhart Tolle reminds us, we are the beginning of the transformed world. Can you feel the power of that? Every single one of us. And it can happen right now if we don't resist it, if we don't block its emergence. So we control our inner life when we put the power of the heart at the helm and stop letting the news out there affect our state of mind as we remember who we are. And by news out there, I'm including the latest Facebook post or the current X Twitter sphere outrage. Contemplative work helps us to be with that, because connecting to the heart increases our immunity to that mass reactivity that's going on. Let me say that again, because this is really important, and it's something that I have to keep reminding myself about, because all it takes for me is to watch the news for 10 minutes and I'm triggered. But connecting to our heart increases our immunity to all that's happening. See? And we can still stay connected to it. We can be immune to it while still staying connected to what's happening. The authors, Wei Kwok, even suggests that love may be our most underdeveloped superpower. I love that. The pot of gold we're seeking for. It's the prize. So it's time for us to prove the principles that we teach. Wouldn't you agree? It's time to be those in action. That is the spiritual renaissance that is ready to emerge. That's the new paradigm of spirituality, is being the change. Never underestimate the power of combined heart-centered intention, married with peaceful, compassionate action, while all the while using the mirror to neutralize our inner reactivity. That combination is what can change the world. So the question, how many meditators does it take to change a culture? Well, the answer turns out to be just one more, you. That's it, just one more. But it all starts within as we begin to rewire our egoic reactivity, egocentric reactivity. That's a big part of our work. The author Pam Grote wrote, "We're here at this remarkable time on planet Earth to expand the universe, not to win Academy Awards for how talented we are at suffering. And I don't know about you, but I've been vying for that award for years. And I've decided I'm out of the running for it. I'm withdrawing my nomination. These times call for a deeper dive into our spiritual practice. And it's the moment for all of us to step into who we've come here to be, to own our power, to feel our strength, to let our hearts be receiving stations for divine wisdom and vehicles for change as we create together a world of peace, a world filled with compassion, kindness, freedom, with rights for all beings. Can you find that world in your heart? Because that's what we want to create. So let me ask you, where have you been looking outside of yourself for your pot of gold? Just consider where in your life maybe that is happening. And is it time to call off the search and turn your attention within? Because the truth is this: your pot of gold is awaiting discovery within your own heart, right here, right now.